WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
Glasstein of Mequon is the Democratic candidate in the 22nd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Dana Glasstein, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Could you tell us what is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Sure. The message is a voice for all. As you know, Wisconsin really is a purple state. And due to extreme partisan gerrymandering of our voting maps, we have not had representation in Madison that reflects that. Last year, I was a petitioner, one of 19 from throughout the state that went before the state Supreme Court to challenge those maps. They were found unconstitutional. And this year, we have an opportunity with fairer maps to finally have the voices of all the people of Wisconsin heard, and that is the goal. I would like us to all have our voices heard after almost a decade and a half of really non-representative legislature in Madison.
So if you're elected to the Assembly, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Sure. Well, I am an educator, and so I think it's important that we shine light on what's going on with funding in our public education system. I hear a lot of questions from people in the district. They're confused as to why, for example, there are so many referenda. We have one, for example, in my district coming up in November for operating expenses. And so I think it's important to shine a light on that. I would support legislation that would put more transparency forth, for example, on property tax bills, where it would show just how much money is being, taken from public education, put into private voucher schools, and the fact that currently the government, really our state government, is funding two separate education systems, which I think is not sustainable.
So if you're elected, you're entering during a biennial budget year, and the state has a projected more than $3 billion surplus. What would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
So, yes, I think we need to give it back, find ways to give it back to working class or middle income people, working families. I think that certainly help for the education system would be useful, and areas, for example, helping out with childcare. And I think those would be two priorities that we could use those funds for.
When you say give it back to the middle class, you're talking about a tax cut or a tax reform of some kind?
Could be. Yes. Other ideas would be infrastructure projects. Since this is kind of a limited amount of money, perhaps things that would, road projects, and perhaps, high-speed internet for rural areas, things like that would have lasting positive effects.
You've mentioned K-12 public education as a priority for you. Mm-hmm. What do you think is working well in K-12 education, and what really needs to change?
I think that educators, I think that administrators are doing well with what they have. They're working, they're doing more with less. And so I think that is working well. I think that people are looking for solutions. So yes, I don't see an imminent collapse, certainly in our public education system, but I do think that they're under strain.
So overall increase, per pupil increase, or is there any specific area that you think needs a funding increase in education? So
I think the entire formula we need to look at. Certainly the per pupil funding. We need to index our funding to inflation, which has not been happening for many years now. And this special education reimbursement of only 33% certainly is not adequate. And, talking to people in my district, school board members, for example, have said that is really one of the big issues that is causing them, for example, to go to referendum. If they were to get more reimbursement on the special education funding, it might make the districts whole and not need to go to referendum.
What about the state's higher education system? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges. What does the future of that system look like to you, and what should the legislature be focusing on?
So as a longtime educator in the technical college system, I clearly have a passion for what's happening there, the mission of the technical college system. There's a lot of great innovative work being done there, collaboration with industry, business and industry in the different communities, collaboration with high schools. We have a lot of students who are coming into the technical colleges during their junior and senior year of high school, and they are taking classes, and by the time they finish high school, they'll not only have their high school diploma, but they'll also have perhaps a technical diploma. Some might even have a 2-year degree. So I think that's going very well. I teach in an area called integrated education and training. It's one of my areas of teaching where we're doing additional supports, for example, to English language learners who might have been internationally trained professionals in their own countries who are ready for the workforce. They just need a little bit of added support. So we're able to give them that support while they're entering program classes, but maybe also still having English language support. So those sorts of things I think are going very well. Unfortunately, there are also cuts in the technical college system funding, and so I do think that if we don't revisit that, we will be looking at a cut in programming in the future.
Do you support an increase in funding for the Universities of Wisconsin system?
Absolutely. I think that, it's been world-class education, and for too long it's been taking hits in funding, and I think that we need to depoliticize higher education in our state. We want to continue to attract, wonderful students who want to stay here in our state, support the economy. Of course, we also, for both K-12 and higher education, want to make sure that we are hiring and retaining and paying qualified educators. So that's another issue too.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
I think in the immediate term, I would say that difficulties with childcare access. I'm hearing that from people in my district, that it's very difficult when childcare for one, certainly 2 children, is as much as the mortgage. They are finding it untenable, and it makes them make decisions about whether or not both parents could be entering the workforce or not. So I think that is important. More mid and long term, I think things we need to think about are making sure that we can continue to educate workers to enter these areas of need in our state. A
few more workforce questions for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yes, I would support that. I think it is very good to have our workers from living here in the state, laying down roots, families here, growing the economy, and certainly I think that's a good thing.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
I'm aware of the issue. I think it's probably illegal. If nothing else, it's certainly unethical. Workers need to be paid fairly, should not be taken advantage of, and we need a level playing field for the business and industry here in Wisconsin.
Moving on to housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Is it rent control, building more rentals, or some other solution?
So I think rent control might be a drastic step at this point. There are a lot of different possibilities for dealing with this. I think that housing stock is very local and varies from community to community. And so I think there's no real one-size-fits-all solution to this problem, but I do look forward to learning more about it and working on a solution.
Healthcare. Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Yes, so last year, Democratic legislators introduced a Healthy Wisconsin bill, or some legislation, and I would support that. It does really three things that are important. Expands Badger Care. I know that this is something that the majority of Wisconsinites do favor and want to happen. It would bring billions of dollars into our state to help others get affordable health care. It would also offer a Badger Care public option, which I think would be very helpful for individuals and small businesses, and it would help to lower prescription drug prices. Other issues or other possibilities, certainly there is money sitting in joint finance that needs to be released. There is no reason we should have to be closing emergency rooms and affecting maternal and labor and delivery care in western Wisconsin. We need to take care of this, certainly. Yes.
What about mental health care? It's a growing concern in Wisconsin, a concern for state and county budgets. What are you hearing on this issue in your district, and how would you propose to address it?
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anybody who has been untouched by this. I think that mental health is really at crisis levels, and we need to do something about that. We've seen, especially post-COVID, a huge rise in incidences of mental health issues with our children and young adults in particular. So I think we definitely need to look at putting more mental health resources, counselors into our school systems and up to K-12 and higher education, and certainly more community-based options also to be there for all.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
So abortion is health care. To me, it's very plain. It's very simple. I do not believe that legislators or judges have any place in making these sorts of private decisions. This should be between a woman and her doctor. I believe we need to repeal that archaic 1849 abortion ban, and I believe that we need to codify access to all reproductive health care, including contraception and IVF.
Should there be any number of weeks as a limit on abortion?
I don't believe that is for me to say. That's between a woman and her doctor, and of course there are all different kinds of situations that come up.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Yes, it is important. In my district, in 22, we do have some problems with employers getting their mostly entry-level employees to the workplace, because we tend to have bus lines that stop at county lines, and there is a disconnect there to get from the rest of the way to the workplace. So I think that we need to look at more cooperation, maybe between municipalities and bus lines. I think we've seen even more of this problem post-COVID, and certainly there's a funding issue, so we need to see what we can do to do that, because it is a workforce issue.
The environment. PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
Oh, absolutely. for people to not have access to clean drinking water is it's a basic necessity. Nobody should have to worry about this. And yes, it needs to be dealt with. I believe there's about $125 million sitting in joint finance for almost a year now that needs to be released to help these communities with the PFAS situation and polluted drinking water. And certainly I think we need to identify who is responsible for this, the polluters, and make them responsible, make them clean it up, and make sure that it does not happen again.
We're down to our final two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Well, it's hard to say. My opponent has not been as vocal on sharing his ideas on the issues that are important for our state. But I do know that I stand with the clear majority of Wisconsinites on the desire to keep access to reproductive health care safe and legal and outside of the hands of lawmakers. And I know that my opponent has voted to restrict access to reproductive health care.
Final question. So if you're elected, you get this magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all people, all parties together. What is the issue?
So, unfortunately, Wisconsin is at the bottom of really the list for legislatures as far as bipartisan collaboration and collegiality goes. Fortunately, this year we do have fairer maps. And I would like to use that magic wand to depoliticize the process of making our voting maps and turn it over to a nonpartisan commission who would make those decisions. And I think that if we have consistently fair maps, both sides are going to have to work together, and we can finally get some work done for the people of Wisconsin.
Well, thank you, Dana Glasstein of Mequon, the Democratic candidate for the 22nd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Dana Glasstein, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much for having me.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.